From Washington, I'm joined by CNN's Stephen Collinson, and our Nick Robertson is here on set with me in London. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Stephen, I want to turn to you first. Let's talk about that National Rifle Association speech that the president just gave. He was very buoyant, looked very confident, but I suppose why wouldn't he be amongst his base?
Yeah, he was back in his comfort zone. We've had a week, basically, in which the president has had to endure repeated and grim assessments of his first 100 days in office, particularly among the media and historians who are basically pointing out that he has no grand legislative achievements. His attempts to do something big like repeal Obamacare, President Obama's healthcare law, have foundered. They foundered actually yet again in the last few hours. And I think what he's doing now is going back to the places he feels most comfortable. The National Rifle Association, which is the powerful gun lobby, which is hugely influential in American politics and where he won a lot of support. On Saturday, he's going to have a big rally in Pennsylvania, one of the states he mentioned there. And this is about, I think, sort of going back to where he feels comfortable and also saying, look, the people that supported me in that shock election win in November are still with me. And to the people that don't like him, and he's got the lowest approval ratings of any modern president at this time in his administration, it's almost like saying, tough, I'm not going to change, this is what you've got.
Yeah, Stephen, we've got to talk as well briefly about this Reuters interview as well. Very, very candid there of President Trump. He's sort of saying, well, he said it exactly, that it's harder than it looks being president. Did you sense or a hint of any regret that he perhaps underestimated the scale of the task ahead?
Well, I think it certainly raises the question, is Donald Trump actually having a very good time being president? Does he actually want to be president? It also raises the question of whether, you know, what he was doing running for president, if he didn't have a good idea of what the job, the most difficult job in the world, many people say, entails. It's not unusual for a president to take office and then find, wow, this is huge. Everything that comes out at me, you know, really quickly is really difficult. What's unusual, I think, is for someone to talk about it so candidly and so openly early on. Presidents often say things like this when they're headed out the door, but this is what Donald Trump's like. He's very personal. He talks to journalists in this sort of candid way, and that's, you know, very unusual. And it also, I think, underlines, you know, the great inexperience of Donald Trump. He had no prior political experience. His learning curve, therefore, is much greater. And his inexperience, the fact that he wasn't a politician, was the reason he was elected in the first place.
And Stephen, just stand by. I want to bring in Nick Robertson, who's in the studio with me. Nick, 100 days of a Trump presidency, 100 days of a lot of foreign policy as well. A surprise, perhaps, to Trump and to the rest of us.
Yeah, I think as we heard from the president there, it's been 100 days of learning. I mean, look, he's learned a huge number of things. Number one, he came in saying that essentially China was an enemy, that was a currency manipulator, but he hasn't decided to call China a currency manipulator. He said he can work well with the president there. He's realized, he's learned on the job that if he wants to tackle the issue of North Korea, he needs the support of China. He's learned pretty quick as well with his cruise missile strike on President Assad's forces for using chemical weapons. When he did that, President Putin of Russia went from being a potential friend. Donald Trump had talked about, well, if he likes me, maybe that's going to be a good thing, to overnight, Putin becomes a foe because he backs Assad. The United States struck Assad's forces. So, you know, there's some things that is learnt on the job there. There are other things that have been, you know, that there's clearly some lessons to go. Angela Merkel not doing the handshake in the Oval Office when she asked it. Angela Merkel, when they were standing at the press conference, making a glib joke about how they, in his opinion, had both shared somehow President Obama, you know, using the security services to eavesdrop on their phones. That was hugely embarrassing for the German Chancellor. Doing that kind of stuff with big guests, that's people... presidents, people who've come into that office before, it's kind of a rookie mistake. But by his own words and what we see, there's an amount of learning,
and
an amount.
Theresa May as well, clinging onto her hand as well. Slightly embarrassing, perhaps, for both of them there as well. I'm wondering what the rest of the world has learnt then from the 100 days. Do world leaders now have a better measure of the man?
They're beginning to get one. Look, when he came in, he was unknown, untested, and that was really unnerving for everyone. I think where people are at right now, there's a certain amount of unease about it. He is still unpredictable. This is a man who, in his business life, in the art of the deal, if you like, a great disruptor going in to negotiate business negotiations and deals, to hit the table hard, demand what you want, get your enemies off balance. The problem is his enemies like North Korea or President Putin and Russia, who doesn't know what he's going to do next in Syria, may be off balance, may be off guard, but at the same time his allies are off balance. They don't quite know what he's going to do next. We have Secretary Tillerson at the UN today saying that the United States, from the United States view, the international community should support the sanctions on North Korea. Diplomatically, that's great language that people want to hear. But what has President Trump done? What has the international community, what has President Trump done? What has Secretary Tillerson done to engender that goodwill that they're now freely demanding and expecting to come from the international community? That's the sort of stuff that takes long-term diplomacy and skills to build up. They haven't put those building blocks in place.
Stephen Collinson, I want to go back to you. Everyone's going to have an opinion on how the 100 days have gone so far. His approval ratings, Donald Trump's approval ratings, I think we've got some stats that we can actually bring up on screen. They're at rock bottom at the moment. However, on the other hand, the markets, they are buoyant. They're doing extremely well over the past 100 days. Do you think that Donald Trump, in doing this interview with Reuters, in which he was so candid, he's basically reclaiming the narrative? He's getting on the front foot before everyone else starts to have an opinion?
Yes, certainly, and he's reaffirming the sort of economic nationalism themes that were so successful for him in the campaign. The Dow, as you said, is on track, it looks like, to be at its highest percentage of any modern-day president since World War II in terms of, increasing value during the first 100 days. I would say that a lot of that, though, is based on expectations. It's based on the expectation that Donald Trump can enact a generational tax reform plan. We've seen that he's not had a great record so far in getting things through Congress. Tax is even more complicated than healthcare, so I think a lot of this is sort of front-loaded. The other thing is that we had first quarter growth figures today, which were somewhat disappointing, 0.7% for most of that period Donald Trump was president. So there are mixed economic signals. I think over the next 100 days and going forward, Donald Trump is going to have to produce results if the stock market is going to continue to be high, and that, of course, is going to have an impact on how Americans feel and ultimately on his approval ratings and his capacity to move legislation to bend the will of lawmakers to do what he wants.
Nick, final word to you on this. Tomorrow is Saturday. Tomorrow marks the 100-day milestone. And what does Donald Trump do on a Saturday? He takes to Twitter. What do you expect?
I think probably if you judge what we've seen this week, there'll probably be quite a stream of tweets from him. They may come early in the day as well. I have the alarm set on my phone, so every time he tweets, I hear it. And, sometimes it seems that it's starting at 6 a.m. in the morning or somebody is for him. So, I think we will have a raft of messages that affirm what he thinks he's achieved, ignore the bad, and even perhaps harp on a little bit about the reporters who are not giving him enough credit, as he did with the NRA again today.
Gentlemen, great to have you both on. Nick Robertson here with me in London. Stephen Collinson in DC, thanks very much indeed.